Hello, everyone. Welcome to our podcast about how to deal with Cosmos DB. I'm Mihailoम Matteev, and I also invited here on this podcast Dmitry Durasov, who is my friend, colleague, Azure MVP, and expert in this area. So, welcome, Dima.
Thank you, Mikhail. Hi, folks.
We will have session which will be quite interactive. That means we have some preliminary schedule, but we will have discussion related to the most interesting things about Cosmos DB, and we will have some considerations: what is good, what is not good, what is our experience. So regarding to this, I will say just several things about Cosmos DB in general, and we will have deeper discussion with Dima about experience and interesting cases related to Cosmos DB. So probably most of you know that Cosmos DB is multimodal, cloud-based database as a service solution from Microsoft, which offers several different APIs which can be used to have different models in your solutions. That means you are able to use on the same platform different models. This is very important when we have microservices solutions where different microservices can require, regarding to specific logic, also different models. I will not talk about specific details which you can read. There are a lot of details about Cosmos DB features, global distribution, and how everything started. Just will mention several most important things. One of these things is actually related to options to control, high availability, and also partitioning regarding to settings in Cosmos DB. So probably most of you know that there are some general requirements when you have database. Probably you know also CAP theorem, that it is not possible to have at the same moment a very high consistency, high availability, and partitioning. In Cosmos DB, you are able to have quite good tuning where you can actually configure this in a way if you need better consistency in different regions, you can have this. If you have better performance, you will choose eventual consistency. But all these settings actually are available for your global account, and you are able actually to manage it. Dima, what do you think? What is probably the most challenging part regarding to your experience with Cosmos DB?
It's a good question, Mikhail. I suppose.
Just regarding to your experience.
Yes, the migration data to Cosmos DB.
Yes, migration of the data is one of the challenges, especially if you have already solution which is on premises or solution which use different database.
Yes, like Microsoft SQL Server, a lot of customers have this on premise.
If we have relational database, we need to consider how to change the model, to denormalize the model,
Yes.
because otherwise actually we will be not able to work in the same way, like with relational databases. Many companies have challenges because they try to use Cosmos DB like relational database, but it is not the best approach. Actually, Cosmos DB need to be used like multimodal NoSQL database, and that is probably the most important in general. Probably you also know that SLA in Cosmos DB is quite high. Depending on your configuration, it could be 4 digits or 5 digits. If you have just single region, it will be 4 digits, but if we have multi-region configuration, you will be able to have up to 9 digits, which is quite good for distributed database in the cloud.
What is on the back end of Cosmos DB? What storage it uses?
On the back end of Cosmos DB, actually, everything is based on the physical level on SSD disks. And when solution actually has the first previews, it was I think 2013 or somewhere around this time. The most popular SSDs used to be 10 gigs SSD disks. Now, of course, these disks looks pretty small, but it was at the beginning also some reason to have limitation about containers. During this time, it was named collection, container size, which used to be in the past 10 gigabytes. Now, actually, the physical container is used transparently. You work with logical containers. What you need to consider is that to have good performance, you should have logical containers which are not bigger as size than physical container behind this. Because actually to have optimal performance, you need to have the logical container on the same physical storage. But you have this data persisted in several places, at least 3, if you have single region configuration. If you have multi-region, of course, it will be stored also in another location. What also is very attractive, probably 1 year ago or a little bit more, Cosmos DB team announced multi-region write solutions. That means that you can have multi-master for multi-region solutions. Actually, we can do this custom as for relational databases, but here the good thing is that if you choose this option, actually you have no need to configure and manage this. You have no need to have any custom logic related or settings related to synchronization of data. You just can use it without any need to know what is behind the stage. So that is one of the interesting things which we have in Azure Cosmos DB, actually. Probably we can talk a little bit about data formats.
Sure, let's start.
So regarding to data formats, actually, we have from one side JSON documents which are used for SQL Core API and which you also can use for some other parts like MongoDB. But Cosmos DB supports also several APIs, and not for all these APIs the essential part of data is represented as JSON document. There is support of Table API, there is support of Graph API, and we have also Cassandra API. So now actually data formats are not the same for different APIs. We can say that yes, SQL and Mogu has pretty similar structure, but for other APIs we have a little bit different structure. Probably it's good to consider some things related to so-named table API, or you can also hear this like premium table storage. There is interesting comparison between Azure Table Storage and Cosmos DB Table API. The reason to have Table API is actually to be possible if you have high requirements like SLA and like support of additional features to use this premium level, premium tier over Cosmos DB, and to keep on the storage level actually standard simple implementation for customers who need to have cheap storage with less functionalities and without high SLA. Table storage actually has one important drawback, which is typical not only for this API, not only for the storage-like product, but for most of typical solutions when we have actually blob-based or like hash table storages. We have only one index which can be used for searching and another one for partitioning. So if we need to have data persisting table storage and to have searches by different attributes, by different fields, it will be an issue in the standard table storage. With Table API, you can do this. You can have different indexes, and you can support much more functionalities. You will be able actually to cover all these missing parts. So I kindly recommend, if you have solutions with table storage and in some reasons on the later stage you need more features, you need to have more complex search, instead to make custom implementation, just to consider migration to Table API. Migration means just to move data. The API on the application level is 100% identical, so you have no need to change your code base, which is very important.
So I have one question, Mikhail. Does Cosmos DB have special tool for migration?
Yes, Cosmos DB has tool for migration. Actually, there is open source solutions you can find in GitHub, even provided from Microsoft for this, where you are able to import data which is in different formats, CSV, JSON format, things like this. So it is possible to have this data migration, but it is not possible out of the box to migrate data from relational database.
Yes, of course, because due to data nature.
Yes, we need to have redesign just about this. And also, migration is specific for different APIs. Definitely, for SQL API, or so-named core API, we have much more options. It is actually the first API, formerly known like DocumentDB, and if you need to support actually import to other APIs, you need to consider some specifics. I mean, Graph API, for example, you just need to consider some specific details related to your data model. Probably we can also discuss a little bit more some key features and design related to Cosmos DB. Probably most of you are experienced with Cosmos DB features and design, but there are some specifics which is good always to be considered. From one side, we need to know that on the high level, structure of Cosmos DB is the following. We have always account. Account actually is abstraction on the logical level, which currently is also related to one specific API and also for one specific multi-region model. So if you have need to use specific API, MongoDB API, SQL API, table API, you need to create account which is related to this API. Till this moment, it is still not possible to have APIs which are different for the same account. In the future, probably it could be changed, but currently this is what we have. Under the account, again on the logical level, we have databases. Databases, again, are just logical abstractions, logical containers, where we actually group our containers which consist data. This is something which is quite important. Many people consider that database has some more deeper representation, but it is just like logical container around our container. And after that, we have general similar model for all APIs, which is actually standardized with the same properties in the most of the part, which is related to containers. Containers actually can be for different APIs, also considered with different terms. Container for SQL API, it is collection. For MongoDB, again is collection. But container which is for table API, for example, is table. It is not collection. Just we have this term on top, which is common to have general, unique terms and almost the same API, at least in the configuration levels the same for different APIs. And we have options to set different indexes and to define partition key, which is important for scalability, actually, of our solution. There are several things which we need also carefully to precise. Probably one of the most important is indexing. Indexing is actually setting which can give you huge difference in the performance. By default, all properties in our data pieces, which can be again different JSON documents, records, are indexed. This could have some issues. sometimes. Dima, what do you think?
About indexing.
Yes.
Actually, it's on by default. What kind of issue do you have?
I mean that indexing actually works very similar like indexing for relational databases. That's the reason probably many people to understand this even without experience with Cosmos DB. Just indexing is a little bit more complex because it also supports data pieces which can has not equal structure. I mean that the tree of the indexes is probably a little bit different, but in general it is pretty similar. If we have Cosmos DB containers, we can choose custom indexing, which is recommended if you know what you want. I mean to exclude indexing of properties which will be not used in queries, because quite often if we have indexing on all fields, it is possible to spend most of the computing power actually for regeneration of indexing. That is also performance case. When we change data, we will spend more computing power for this. Yes, if we only read data, it will help, or at least it will be not bad. But when we have continuously changed database, it will be case of performance and expense. That's the major case.
And what is overhead for the indexing? Actually, what is the pricing model for the Cosmos DB?
Pricing model is based on several parameters. Actually, pricing model is by container or by collection, and in each container you have from one side throughput. Throughput is actually how much operations we can proceed per unit of time, and it can be changed on different, not only on different tiers. It could be changed flexible. You can set and change your throughput. And the second part is actually number of partitions. Actually, if you have more partitions, you will arrange more data.
So the indexing operation.
Indexing operations are related also to throughput, because computing power actually is related to one, I can say, a little bit foggy unit, which is very similar to DTU in Azure SQL database, and here it is named request unit.
Request unit.
Request unit actually gives approximate estimation about computing power which is needed to read one document around one key with no more than 10 properties, and usually we have operations which require much more. If we have some write, some updates, we have much more request units, and as many as more indexes we have, as many request units actually are needed. So this is the relation. More indexes can affect to our request units for specific operations and the limitation of throughput.
And one more question: are these request units scalable on demand? Just auto scaling.
Auto scaling is a new feature which it was announced several days ago.
Okay.
It is still in preview. So yes, we already have auto scale in the past regarding to projects which at least I had. We usually control these programmatically. because it was possible to change the request units via API also, by code, not only from the settings and management portal. Now it is not needed, but there are several specifics. First, regarding to dynamic scaling of the throughput. Why we need this? We need this because we can have quite often different throughput depending on different demand. Typical use case is when we have, for example, IoT solution and we collect data. When we collect data, Cosmos DB can scale automatically, I mean to add new partitions, if you set some specific throughput with request units. And if you limit these request units, Cosmos DB scaling partitions if in some moment you have more throughput regarding to data ingression. But this scaling actually works very well if you have one operation. The difference is when you have another operation, which is, for example, if you create report, you can query data and to require much higher throughput. And if you require this much higher throughput, actually, if you do not change this throughput dynamically, you will receive throttling. Error for throttling, I think 429. And to prevent this, in the past, we managed this programmatically. If we realize that throughput is changing, we actually programmatically change the limit for the collection or the container. But, of course, that needs custom logic. Now, Microsoft actually offers this automatically. Regarding to the payment, there are some specifics. If you change programmatically or now with auto-scale this throughput, the charging will be for the maximum throughput per hour. So actually the timeline cannot be smaller than 1 hour. If you have peak in this 1 hour, pricing for your Cosmos DB for this collection will be related for this hour in the context of the peak usage. So that's the specific which we need to know when we have such kind of solutions in general. Probably also is good to say some things about the common model of Cosmos DB, where we have some additional components. I mean, not only account, database, and container. What we have additionally? Actually, on the account level, we have also one specific thing which is named media. Actually, media is storage for big files in the context of Cosmos DB account. It is mostly for convenience. I mean, if you have some media files, to have these files in the context of same database account, to have no need to create separate storage and to consider how to use everything together, having some custom logic. So it is something which can be used, just few companies use it, and there is potential. Also, it is interesting to know a little bit more about role-based access control. Several months ago, actually, role-based access control and integration with Active Directory was announced for Cosmos DB. In the past, this control was realized based on separate accounts. Initially, when Cosmos DB used to be even document DB, the use cases which were considered were a little bit different. During this time, Cosmos DB / document DB was considered mostly to be used in custom applications, and these users to be actually managed internally in the context of application logic. And initially, there was very limited model where you will be able to have on the database up to 5 users with some permissions. That means we had even very simple role similar model. After that, this model was extended, and later actually it was integrated with Azure Identity Management System, that means Azure Active Directory. So this is actually the specific things related to role-based access control. Now, Cosmos DB supports everything which you have for other services which has already role-based access control support. About containers, we also discuss details about pieces of data under containers. We have items. In general now, the new name is item, but in the context of item, we can have document or table row or something different regarding to the specific API. And something which also is not very effectively used, there is option for attachments. Attachments which are maximum up to 2 megabytes are mostly to be possible to have very flexible approach if you have some attached additional data. For example, if you have news portal and you are using Cosmos DB to store your data, why you need to have different storage and to have different business logic actually to support some small images or another files? You can put this like attachment in the same document, and after that actually the whole data management and bounding will be simpler.
And how many attachments can be attached to the single document?
One attachment.
One attachment per document.
Yes, one attachment up to 2 megabytes.
So, for example, for the news article, just single attachment. It's
yes, well, if we need to have more complex data attached, then we need to consider some custom logic. Of course, attached data can be serialized binary object which can contain other files inside.
Yes, but actually I suppose we can store attachment in the media folder.
Yes, it is possible.
And
yes.
Does it actually can the data be stored in multiple regions? Can we specify the path of the region?
If we stored data in several regions, we have actually the following models. Always in all regions we have duplication of data.
Yep.
And we just have two models when only one region is read-write and other are read, or if we have multi-write multi-region support. So yes, we can have multi-regions, and we will have option to have duplicated data there.
Yeah, for example, in single write, multi-read, we can store the data, for example, in Europe and in North America to provide the shortest path for our customers.
Yes, actually how it works. We usually store the data where is the right location, or if we have multi-write regions, where is the closest location. That is the idea about this. And data asynchronously is replicated and you have it available in other regions, depending on your settings, it can take some small time, more or less, depending on your consistency model. That's the idea.
Okay.
So, several other things which people usually know but do not use very effectively. Stored procedures. Actually, stored procedures are quite powerful tool which can be used in Cosmos DB because stored procedures actually are executed on the server. It is not just code based. We write these procedures using JavaScript. Stored procedures are executed in the context of container and has access of the whole elements inside the container. But you are not able to access directly without custom logic from outside in this stored procedure components which are from other collections. So if you need to have such kind of cross-container processing, usually you need to use Azure Functions or some other approach, or to call from your stored procedure something else. But yes, it is not out of the box. What else is important? Actually, triggering. Triggering can be done in 3 different ways now in Cosmos DB. Actually, Cosmos DB is one of the perfect services to implement event-driven design, because from one side we have triggers. Triggers initially were realized actually to support only stored procedures. So we had stored procedure which is triggered for specific events, specific operation. Later, it was added also to have option to trigger Azure functions, which give you relative simple option to have custom cross-container, cross-database logic in your solution if you have event-driven design. And later, actually, Cosmos DB started to offer also options to attach from outside to events from the change feed. That means if something in your data is changed, you can listen these events and to have from outside some custom logic which is attached to some kind of specific events. So we have actually 2 variations of triggers plus options to attach to events which are exposed from change trigger. So there is another component, let's say it component, so named user-defined functions. User-defined functions are pure JavaScript functions which is not related to specific container context. So you have just input parameters and you have output. And you can use these user-defined functions for everything, but you have no direct access to the context of your container. These are the elements which we have actually in our Cosmos DB structure. And actually, what is important also, all these components are available via REST API because Cosmos DB is Azure service and it exposed REST APIs. SDKs, which are allowed, are available, sorry, they are wrappers of this REST API in general. You are able to make everything, even to manage indexes also there. Everything is based on this REST API, which are exposed. We will not talk in details about REST API, first because we would like to talk mostly about challenges, what we have, what is good, what is not good. These details are done in documentation and also in my blogs and presentations. Just probably is good to mention that there are several specific properties which you will have mandatory in your items. Doesn't matter if it is actually JSON document or another item. You have some system generated properties which are needed to Cosmos DB to be possible to support some functionalities, like actually resource identifiers, which are on hierarchical level, and you can access directly some specific resource. We have for concurrency, for optimistic concurrency, also ETAG. We have timestamp. We have self-link and internal ID of each of the resources. So regarding to this, just consider if you have already generated documents to not change these properties. Probably it's good also to add some additional information about partitioning. We started to talk about partitioning,
Yep.
but probably we missed some details. Initially, Cosmos DB offered fixed size containers or collections with different throughput, different tiers. And during this time, we did actually dynamic partitioning on the client side with custom logic. Later, single partitioning was created, and single partitioning actually started from SDK version 2. In this SDK, it was supported partitioned collection and single partition collection. The difference is that partitioned collection actually used dynamic partitioning, and single partition collection used to support fixed size, the old fixed size of 10 gigs, with dynamic change of the throughput. Now, in SDK version 3 and in the future, only partitioned collections are supported. You have no fixed size collections. If you need to manage by code fixed size collections, you need to actually use the older SDK version 2. It is still supported. But the future is in partitioned collections, you have no real need to have these limitations.
And do we have actually maximum storage limit? Is it
That's interesting question. Actually, thank you. Yes and no. Why?
Can we use terabytes of data, or petabytes, like used for big data solutions?
We are limited by default up to 220 gigabytes, but this default is because just usage of resources need to be controlled. I mean that if you need containers with size bigger than 250 gigabytes, you need to send request to Microsoft support and they will increase it. But by default, you have this limit. After that, you actually have options to have unlimited size. Well, unlimited is something which can be discussed. I had never options to test it with more than 1 TB. So probably it could be discussed, but my understanding is that actually nowadays this size already can be unlimited, really. Initially, there were some limitations, which were, I think, 1 or 2 TB, something like this, but now it is absolutely unlimited regarding to my understanding. But I didn't test it.
Okay.
So, probably it's good also to have some details about partitioning, because partitioning actually is one of the major functionalities here in Cosmos DB. Partitioning is actually the major feature which gives us this advantage of NoSQL solutions, that we can have very flexible, theoretically unlimited scalability in general. So regarding to partitioning, we have almost the same best practices like for relational databases. We are able to have for our containers partitioning keys, which can be considered on different logic. We can have range partitioning, where we can have actually ranges for different values. We can have splitting by domains. We can have partitioning by regions, for example, like US, UK, different regions. And also partitioning is related to throughput. Our throughput is actually limited to the partitioning, and we can have theoretically unlimited throughput, because if we scale our container, we can have the whole throughput also increased. But you need to pay for this.
Yes, and we need to add additional logic for this data sharding.
Yes and no. Actually, partitioning allow us to have this scaling of the throughput without to have additional logic. It could be done with automatic partitioning, this in dynamic collections, in partitioned collections. So we will not have much time.
By the way, do we have any issues with this automatic partition? I suppose in some
Yes.
cases the algorithm can works not as expected, and
Yes,
not
we have.
increase, yes, throughput, but in decrease them.
We are not able to decrease it if we have automatic scaling. I mean that actually, if you have automated scaling, your scaling is because you need more throughput, or if you have new regions, I mean new areas for your partition keys or something like this, and you will have data in these partitions. Actually, logical partitions also are flexible, right size, but you need to have custom logic to scale it down if you want, for example. That's one of the things, and related to the price and throughput, I already explained that everything is up to timeline of 1 hour. Also, when you have dynamic scaling, it is when you have less than 10% of your resource for specific partitions. So you can manage custom these parameters probably a little bit more effective. It is not perfect, but it is quite good, like some kind of average number of cases. For most of the customers, it is more than fine.
We have 7 minutes.
Yes, we have 7 minutes more. We will not talk in details about development and API. Just probably is good to mention that for several SDKs. We have full support. That is, of course, for .NET, for Node.js, for Java, and Python. Actually, for other languages like Go, like Gremlin or Xamarin applications, we have for now limited support for different APIs. But we will not talk about how to create applications. It is something which we will have in specific presentations, live presentations, and this podcast is not the right place to explain details. We will discuss just several things which are more related to optimization. I will switch to Cosmos DB performance. So there are a few things which are really important. Networking connection. You have two properties which are with relative important role. Actually, your gateway mode, so how you will provide connection to different containers and different partitions, and also your protocol. And you will be able, actually, when you create new container, when you create new client, to have these properties actually set. If you have TCP support, you will have better performance in most of the cases. Your direct mode will be better if you manage directly partitions. If you have cross-partitioning, it will be not very effective. But if you have direct management of partitions in your containers, yes, it could bring you additional functionalities. That is something which you can consider if you want to optimize this. Of course, we have also this consideration about regions. If we need to have multi-region support, we need actually to use the right settings, not to have just one region and to try to access from different applications and services from different regions Cosmos DB. Self-link, this unique URL which you have actually in the context of your account, is something which is generated in your request based on several hops between your clients and backend. So you can cache it. You can cache this self-link, and in this case, actually you can have much faster request for often requested resources. How to find the right resources, especially. There is some specific also for regional failover. Cosmos DB supports regional failover, but the case is that it works pretty good in right direction when you need to change your primary location. After that, you need to bring back everything manually. Microsoft do that because there are a lot of specific cases when you switch back, and it is better this to be part of responsibility of the customers. Otherwise, there will be too many edge cases which we need to be supported. Several more things, actually. One of the very interesting announcements this spring was actually the general release of version 3 of Cosmos DB SDK and support of also Entity Framework Core. Entity Framework Core now can be used also with Cosmos DB. So you will have general approach to manage all your databases, relational databases and also Cosmos DB, using the same model. Yes, for relational databases probably it will be more critical to use ORM, but regarding to the productivity and time to market, it is very important. And probably again to go back to the new feature which was announced exactly before the Ignite, auto pilot mode, which means auto scaling of your throughput. So we have from a time already auto scaling of the partitioning, and now we have auto scaling of the throughput. So we will be able actually to rely on this logic for probably 95 to 99% of the cases without need to support custom logic
Looks
here.
good.
Yes. Before to finish, probably several things which at least could be considered like good options for the future. Backup and restore actually can be more flexible to have specific points from which to make restore and to manage backups. In IoT solutions, it could be quite convenient to have support of offline version on the client side. Otherwise, different customers do this with custom logic in different way, but they solve the same task. Cosmos DB on premises, on Azure Stack, it is something one of the things which our customers are looking for. Another convenience probably in the future is to support multiple APIs per Cosmos DB account, and also to extend support for MongoDB. This is something which is probably very convenient. Also for me, like person who work on IoT solutions, I will be glad if we are able to have direct output from IoT Hub to Cosmos DB. Now we are using some custom logic with Azure Functions or some components like Azure Stream Analytics just to make these connections. What do you think, Dima? Do we need also something additional?
Suppose backup is mandatory, actually, because unfortunately, many of Azure file system, for example, has no backup.
Yes, that's true.
And this feature, and we need to use some kind of home-brewed or third-party solution.
Yes, that's true.
Actually, it's more important than for me and for my customers.
That's correct also from my side. That's the reason to put it on the first place.
We run out
Yes,
of time.
we are running out of time. So thank you very much for the listening. Thank you, Dima, for coming. And yes, we would like to say thanks for listening to our podcast. We recorded this podcast at Microsoft Ignite. Thanks to Microsoft for this invitation. And Microsoft is giving away Microsoft Surface earbuds. So please visit https://aka.ms/podcast sweepstakes, and you will learn more about options how to win your awards.
Yes, podcast sweepstakes. Sweepstakes, guys.
Thank you very much.
In front of camera that you can try to win this nice piece of Microsoft equipment.
Thank you one more time, and enjoy Ignite, and enjoy your work with Cosmos DB.
Thank you, guys. See you.
See you.